Get your filthy bins off the curb, now! Marla Denton's voice cracked through the crisp Virginia morning like a whip. By the time I stepped out of the garage, my daughter Ava was already standing in the driveway, cheeks red, tears brimming. Marla, Cypress Hollow's self-appointed queen, was waving her clipboard like a badge of authority. "I told you yesterday," she barked, striding closer, heels stabbing the pavement. "Trash pickup's over, and this," she jabbed a manicured finger toward the overturned bin, "is a violation. Again." Ava's voice trembled. "I was just—" But Marla cut her off, shoving the bin upright with one hand and my daughter's shoulder with the other. It happened so fast, I didn't process it until the hollow clang echoed through the cul-de-sac. Ava stumbling backward, her knees giving out, landing half in the trash can. For a second, the only sound was the low buzz of cicadas. Then my pulse started to roar in my ears. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice carrying farther than I meant it to. "Step away from her." Marla froze, her face tightening. "Oh, Mr. Cole, I didn't see you there," she said, feigning surprise. "Your daughter was disrespectful. I was merely—" "Don't." My tone made her blink. "You put your hands on her." She straightened, chin high. "You can't speak to me like that. I'm the HOA president, and your family's been warned about those bins for weeks. Rules apply to everyone. Except you, apparently." Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't threaten me, Ethan. I know people." I took a step closer, closing the space between us until she had to tilt her head to meet my gaze. "So do I said evenly. Tommy Greer's front door creaked open across the street. He lingered in the doorway, half hidden behind the frame, his expression twisted between curiosity and fear. He'd seen it all, but he didn't move, didn't say a word. Marla brushed imaginary lint from her blouse, then leaned toward me. "If you can't control your daughter, maybe you shouldn't live here." I felt Ava's hand clutch the back of my shirt, small and shaking. I wanted to snap, to let every ounce of training and fury pour out. But years in law enforcement had drilled restraint into my bones. "Go inside, sweetheart," I murmured. Ava hesitated. "Dad, now." When she was gone, I turned back to Marla. "Touch my daughter again," I said quietly, "and the only rule you'll be reading is a Miranda warning." Her smile faltered, then snapped back into place. "Such dramatics. I'll make sure this goes in the next violation report." She tapped her clipboard, turned sharply, and marched off toward her pristine SUV. The sound of her engine faded down the street, leaving only the rustle of trees and the faint trickle of the cracked marble fountain at the subdivision's entrance. Tommy finally stepped out from his doorway. "Ethan," he said softly, "you might want to let this one go. She's vindictive." I looked at him, seeing the conflict written all over his face. "You saw what she did." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, but she's got the board wrapped around her finger. You go after her, and it'll get ugly fast." "Then I guess ugly's overdue." He nodded once, then retreated, leaving me alone with the bin, the spilled trash, and the gnawing realization that this wasn't over. I knelt to help Ava's school project, a crumpled cardboard solar system, out of the debris. The paper planets were streaked with coffee grounds and banana peels. I brushed them off one by one, feeling my jaw tighten. Marla Denton thought she ran this place. She had no idea who she'd just shoved into the trash. What would you do if the person enforcing the rules thought they were above the law? Hit subscribe, because this isn't about garbage cans anymore. This is about power and what happens when it finally tips the wrong way. Let me back up and tell you how this started. I first noticed the crack in Cypress Hollow's foundation long before the fountain split. It wasn't in the marble or the sidewalks. It was in the way neighbors stopped waving. After that morning with Marla, word traveled fast. People I'd known for years suddenly looked busy trimming hedges when I walked by. Even Tommy, the one who'd watched the whole thing, barely nodded from across the street. Ava stayed quiet for days. She used to ride her bike to the pond after school, but now she kept to her room, headphones on, pretending she couldn't hear Marla's car crawl past every afternoon. I tried to let it go. God knows I wanted to. I'd seen what obsession looked like in my line of work, the kind that eats people from the inside out. But every time I saw Marla's smug little smile, something in me itched. The first letter came 3 days later. Notice of violation. Improper placement of refuse containers. Fine, $75. No signature, just Board of Directors. But I knew her handwriting on the envelope. I dropped it on the counter and poured coffee, trying not to laugh. Ava sat at the table, pushing cereal around her bowl. "Dad," she said finally, "is she allowed to do that after—" "She can file whatever she wants," I said, forcing calm. "Doesn't mean it'll stick." I told myself it was just a game, a petty power play. But 2 days later, another envelope arrived. Notice of violation. Unauthorized exterior lighting as fixture. Fine. 125s, she was escalating. That evening, I caught Tommy watering his lawn and walked over. "You got a minute?" He hesitated, glancing toward Marla's house. A gleaming 2-story at the end of the cul-de-sac, every shrub cut like it had been measured with a ruler. "Make it quick," he murmured. "You're on the board," I said. "Did these fines come from her, or a vote?" He shifted the hose in his hands. "Technically, all fines have to be approved, but sometimes Marla fast-tracks things. So this isn't the board, it's her." "She is the board, Ethan," he said quietly. "Half the neighborhood owes her favors. You go against her, she'll find something. Grass height, mailbox color, whatever it takes." I studied him. Sweat beaded at his temple even though the evening breeze had cooled. "You saw what she did to Ava." He looked away. "I know, but if I speak up, she'll come after me next. My wife's already on her radar for that shed out back." "Tommy," I said, lowering my voice, "you're the treasurer. You sign off on those fines. If she's using HOA funds for personal payback, that's embezzlement." He swallowed hard. "You can't prove that." "Not yet." He dropped the hose. Water pooled around his shoes. "You're playing with fire. Then I'll bring a bigger flame." The next morning, I walked the neighborhood before sunrise. The air smelled of mulch and wet asphalt. Every driveway gleamed except mine. My truck sat there, dusted with pollen. A quiet rebellion against Marla's glossy order. I noticed something odd at her place. A motion-activated floodlight over her garage. The same kind she'd fined me for. Installed just last week, according to the vendor sticker still peeling off the base. I took a photo, then another. As I stood there, a window curtain shifted. Marla's silhouette appeared, backlit by the soft glow of her kitchen light. She raised her coffee mug like a toast and smiled through the glass. A chill ran through me. She wanted me to see her. When I got home, Ava was on the porch with the mail in her hands. Another envelope. Notice of violation. Lawn length exceeding HOA standards. Fine. $100. She held it out like it was toxic. "Dad, maybe we should move." I looked past her toward the cracked fountain, the morning sun catching in its broken marble veins. "No," I said. "We're not the ones who should run." That night, I started a file. Dates, letters, photos, timestamps. Old habit from years of casework. If Marla Denton wanted a war of paper, I'd give her one built on evidence. But I knew paper wouldn't be enough. I needed someone inside the system. Someone with access to the board's records, meeting notes, bank statements. I needed Tommy Greer to find his conscience. And if he didn't, I'd make sure the county did. The next HOA meeting was held in the Cypress Hollow clubhouse, a glossy echoing room that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fear. I hadn't been to one in years. Most folks avoided them, unless forced. But tonight, I wanted Marla Denton to look me in the eye. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as folding chairs scraped against the tile. 10 residents clustered near the front, whispering. A few glanced up when I entered, then looked away. The air was thick with something unspoken, the kind of tension I'd felt in interrogation rooms right before someone broke. Tommy sat at the treasurer's table, hands clasped so tight his knuckles whitened. Marla, centered at the head like a queen at her court, was smiling, the same brittle smile she'd worn the day she pushed my daughter into a trash can. "Evening, everyone," she said, tapping her pen against a stack of papers. "We'll start with new business. It seems we've had a rash of non-compliance." Her eyes flicked toward me, just long enough to make the message clear. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "Before you get too far, I'd like to address that." The room went quiet. Marla's pen froze mid-tap. "Mr. Cole," she said sweetly, "we follow an agenda here. You'll have your turn." "I'm sure you do," I said. "Right after the fines, the threats, and the illegal inspections." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone coughed. Tommy's leg bounced under the table. Marla tilted her head, the fluorescent glare catching the diamond studs at her ears. If you have concerns, you can submit them in writing, as outlined in our bylaws. Already did. I stepped forward, holding up a copy of her letter. 3 times, no response. That's because you're in violation, she snapped. Multiple, actually. I walked closer, my boots clicking against the tile. Funny thing, Marla, that motion light you just installed? Same model as the one you fined me for. Her face froze. A collective intake of breath spread through the room. That's different, she said quickly. Mine was approved. By who? The board. I turned to Tommy. That true? He looked like a man trying to breathe through water. We hadn't voted yet. Marla's smile tightened. Tommy, that was administrative. I cleared it with you. He swallowed. I don't remember that conversation. The silence stretched until someone in the back muttered, So the rules don't apply to her? Marla's voice went sharp. This meeting is out of order. No, I said. It's finally in order. For the first time, her mask cracked. You think you can come in here and intimidate me? I've been running this community for 8 years. I met her glare. Then maybe it's time someone checked your record. She leaned across the table, lowering her voice. Careful, Lieutenant. You might not like what people dig up about you. That hit harder than it should have. She knew about my job, probably from gossip, but it was the way she said it, like a dare, that made my jaw clench. Tommy cleared his throat. Maybe we should... Sit down, she snapped. He didn't. Instead, he reached for the folder in front of him, trembling fingers sliding out a ledger sheet. There's something off with the accounts, he said quietly, almost to himself. What? I asked. He looked at Marla, then back at me. Monthly maintenance fees. There's money missing. Transfers that weren't approved. Marla's chair scraped back. That's enough. Tommy flinched. The paper slipped from his hand, fluttering to the floor. I bent to pick it up, scanning the numbers. Years of investigative work made patterns jump out at me. Recurring withdrawals to an entity I didn't recognize. Who's Cypress Community Services LLC? I asked. Her voice was ice. That's internal business, none of your concern. It will be, I said, because starting tomorrow, I'll be forwarding this to the county auditor's office. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, someone's phone buzzing on a chair. Marla's face went pale, then pink, then steel. You're making a mistake, she hissed. No, I said, folding the paper neatly. You did. Tommy couldn't look at her. His pen clicked over and over in his trembling hand. When the meeting finally adjourned, no one spoke. Chairs scraped, doors shut, and the fluorescent hum filled the silence. I walked out into the night air, the cool wind hitting my face like a reset. Behind me, I heard Marla's heels clatter fast across the tile. You think your badge gives you power here? She called. This is my neighborhood. I turned, meeting her under the flickering streetlight at the clubhouse door. Not for long. She smiled again. Small, sharp, dangerous. We'll see. And in that moment, I knew the war had gone public. I didn't sleep that night. The numbers on Tommy's ledger replayed in my head like a code waiting to be cracked. Same company name, same transfer pattern, always just below the threshold that would trigger automatic reporting. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. By sunrise, my kitchen table looked like a crime scene. Invoices, bank statements I'd pulled from public filings, and a notepad covered in arrows and amounts. Ava wandered in, hair messy, eyes still swollen from sleep. Are you working a case? She asked. In a way, I said, but this one's personal. She leaned on the counter. Is this about her? Yeah. She hesitated. You'll stop her, right? That question landed heavy. I'll do what's right, I said. That's all I can promise. By 9, I was at the county offices downtown, not as Lieutenant Cole, but as Ethan the homeowner, filing a formal inquiry into HOA fund misuse. I kept my tone professional, every sentence measured. The clerk took my statement, stamped it, and promised to forward it to the Financial Crimes Unit. When I walked back to my truck, the sky had gone gray, a storm brewing, the kind that made the air electric before the rain broke. That's when I saw her, Marla Denton sitting in her silver Lexus across the street, engine idling. She rolled down her window slowly, like a scene rehearsed too many times. "Morning, Lieutenant," she called. "Busy day?" I didn't answer. She smirked. "Word travels fast. People don't like tattletales, you know." I leaned against my truck. "Funny, neither do I." Her eyes glittered. "You think you scare me because you carry a badge? You're not in uniform here. You're just another resident, and residents can be removed. Bylaws don't allow that. Not yet." She drove off, tires hissing against the wet pavement. That night, the intimidation started. My mailbox was stuffed with anonymous flyers. Neighborhood safety alert. Beware of unstable residents. Bold letters, no sender. A photo of my truck, parked slightly past the curb, circled in red marker. Someone had slipped it under every door on the street. By morning, 2 neighbors who used to wave at Ava stopped making eye contact. One woman, Mrs. Landry, actually turned her sprinkler on when I walked past. Tommy showed up at my porch just before noon, looking pale. "You have to stop," he said. "She's calling an emergency board meeting tonight. Says you're harassing her." I handed him a copy of the ledger. "You know this isn't harassment." He looked at it, jaw working. "You don't understand how far she'll go. She's got people on payroll. Her cousin's a lawyer. The board'll side with her." "Not the county." He shook his head. "You think the county cares about a few missing HOA dollars?" "Depends how many zeros she's taken." Tommy ran a hand through his hair. "Ethan, please. She's already told people you pulled a gun once. Said your temper got you suspended." I stared at him. "That never happened." "I know, but rumors stick faster than truth." The wind picked up, scattering the flyers across the porch. One stuck to my boot, my own face staring back under the words, "unstable resident." I peeled it off and handed it to him. "You still signing her checks?" He hesitated. "For now." "Then you're part of it." His shoulders slumped. "I don't want to be." "Then prove it." That night, the board gathered again. I didn't attend, not this time. Instead, I parked 2 blocks away, camera on the dash, mic recording. Old habits die hard. From my truck, I watched silhouettes move behind the clubhouse curtains. Every few minutes, lightning lit their faces, Marla's sharp profile, Tommy's hunched shoulders, the others nodding like marionettes. At 8:37 p.m., they left one by one. Tommy lingered last, glancing over his shoulder before walking toward his car. A text buzzed on my phone. "Tommy. She's using HOA funds for consulting. Company's fake. I'll get proof." I typed back, "Be careful." No reply came. When I drove home, I noticed the cracked marble fountain again. Rainwater filled its basin, reflecting the streetlights like broken glass. For the first time, the water ran over the edge, spilling across the curb. Something in me shifted then. The quiet line. Between patience and action. Marla Denton had crossed it. The morning after the storm, Cypress Hollow smelled like wet mulch and ozone. The fountain overflowed again, spilling muddy water across the entrance sign like it was bleeding from its cracks. Ava refused to walk to school. She said her friend's parents were acting weird. I didn't push it, just drove her myself. She kept her hood up, earphones in, silent. When I got home, an envelope sat wedged between my front door and frame. Not HOA stationery this time. Plain white, no return address. Inside was a photo. Ava sitting on the school steps, head down, alone. Scrawled across the bottom in red ink. "Keep her out of it." My stomach went cold. I looked around the yard, half expecting a car to be parked somewhere, a shadow to move, but the street was empty, calm, too calm. I called Tommy. "We need to meet." He hesitated. "Not over the phone." We met that evening behind the grocery store off Cypress Road, where delivery trucks drowned conversation in engine noise. He climbed out of his SUV, wearing a ball cap low over his face. "You weren't followed?" he asked. "This isn't a movie, Tommy." "Feels like one," he muttered, handing me a flash drive. "HOA bank records, 2 years' worth. Took me all night to copy without triggering alerts." I pocketed it. "You just committed theft, technically." He shrugged. "Call it self-defense." We leaned against the loading dock, the air thick with diesel and rain. "She knows you're helping me," I said. He froze. "How?" "Because she sent a threat about Ava." His eyes widened. "Jesus, Ethan, she's unhinged. I told you she's not right." "Then we end this," I said. "Now." He nodded, but his hands trembled. You don't get it. She's got eyes everywhere. Half these people owe her. Landscaping contracts, parking exemptions, you name it. She's got leverage. Then I'll use mine. When I got home, I loaded the files onto my laptop. Every entry, every transfer, every cent that didn't belong to her. Cypress Community Services LLC, the shell company she'd created, had received monthly payments labeled consultation fees. Same routing number, same date every month. I cross-referenced it with the county business registry, the company's address, a P.O. box at the same strip mall as the grocery store where Tommy and I met. I printed the records, marked the connections, and stored the originals in a safe. Then I emailed the report directly to the county's financial crimes unit. Subject line, potential embezzlement by HOA official, Cypress Hollow Estates. By the next morning, I got an automated reply, case received, under review. It was enough to make me breathe easier for a minute until I saw the paint. Across my driveway, in thick red spray, someone had written, liar. Ava found it first. She stood there barefoot, staring at the word bleeding across the concrete. Is this because of me? She whispered. No, I said. It's because of me. She turned to me, eyes glassy. I hate it here. I crouched beside her. I know, kiddo, but it's almost over. That night, I set up a motion camera facing the street. Old narcotics surveillance gear. Nothing fancy, but reliable. Then I sat in the dark, watching through the window as rain tapped against the glass. Around 2 a.m., the camera pinged. A figure in a poncho moved across the yard, quick and deliberate. I zoomed in, couldn't see a face, but I caught the license plate as the car pulled away. Virginia tags, registered to Marla Denton. By sunrise, I had the footage saved and backed up twice. I sent one copy to the county investigator's inbox. The other, I kept on my own drive. Tommy texted mid-morning, Tommy. She's panicking, called an emergency session, trying to fire me. Me, let her. The more she scrambles, the more she slips. Hours later, another message came. Tommy, she said she knows you filed a report. She's going to make it personal. Me, it already is. That afternoon, when I went to check the mailbox, I noticed something glinting near the front step. A bullet casing, clean, placed deliberately upright. I crouched, staring at it, the neighborhood around me silent except for the faint burble of the cracked fountain. This wasn't about fines anymore. Marla Denton wanted a war. She was about to get one. The county investigator called 2 days later. His tone was polite but careful, the kind of voice people use when they're not sure who's listening. Lieutenant Cole, this is Detective Raina Harris, Financial Crimes Division. I'm following up on your HOA report. Can you meet in person? Absolutely, I said. We met that afternoon at a coffee shop on Millbrook Avenue. Neutral ground. She wore plain clothes, jeans, blazer, badge tucked discreetly at her belt. I handed her the drive Tommy had given me. She scrolled through the data, eyes narrowing. These transfers? You're sure they weren't authorized? Positive, I said. HOA's bylaws require 2 board signatures. She's the only one signing. Rena nodded slowly. This is good work, not your jurisdiction, though. I know, I said, sipping burnt coffee, but she's escalating. Threats, property damage, intimidation. She's hiding behind procedure. Rena's gaze sharpened. You saying she threatened you directly? Not me. I paused. My daughter. That made her sit back. All right, she said. Then we'll open a parallel file. Misuse of funds with possible harassment. Her professionalism steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like this might end without someone getting hurt. Until I got home. A county code enforcement vehicle was parked outside my house, hazard lights blinking. A man in uniform stood in my yard, clipboard in hand. Mr. Cole? He asked. We received an anonymous complaint. Unpermitted security equipment. He gestured toward my motion camera. I exhaled through my nose. You're kidding. Afraid not, sir. Gotta document it. Who filed the complaint? He glanced down. Doesn't say. Comes through HOA channels. Of course it did. I signed the citation without arguing. $250 fine. As he left, I noticed Marla's Lexus 2 houses down, idling again. She didn't even hide it this time. She waved. That night, Tommy texted, Tommy, She's telling people you're under investigation, said the county's looking into you. Me. Let her. The real file's already moving. Tommy. You don't get it? She's planning something for the next meeting. Me. Then I'll be there. The days crawled by. Cypress Hollow felt like a stage play directed by paranoia. Neighbors whispered on lawns. The fountain's cracked base now hosted weeds, like even the marble was giving up. Ava tried to stay out of it, but the tension found her anyway. Dad, she said one evening, Ms. Denton came to school. I looked up from my laptop. What? She talked to my principal, said she was concerned about my home environment. My stomach dropped. Did she say why? Ava's voice broke. She said you were unstable, that you were being investigated. I stood so fast my chair scraped tile. That's it. That night, I called Rena. She's crossing into personal territory, I said. Rena's voice was calm but firm. I'll expedite the review, but you need to stay clean. No direct confrontation. Let us build the case. Understood. Still, old instincts die hard. I checked my locks twice, reviewed the footage again. At 11:42 p.m., I caught movement. Someone pacing near the fountain, flashlight sweeping across the curb. The camera zoomed. Tommy, I met him outside. He jumped when I called his name. Jesus, Ethan, you scared me. What are you doing out here? Making sure she's not planting anything, he said, glancing around. She's desperate, man. The audit's making waves. County sent her a request for documents this morning. She's furious. Good. He rubbed his arms, eyes darting. You don't get it. She said if she goes down, she's taking everyone with her, including me. I signed half those transfers. You were following orders, I said. That's cooperation, not guilt. Tell her that, he muttered. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The air smelled like copper and rain. I looked toward Marla's house, lights blazing, blinds drawn tight. She's not going to win, Tommy. He didn't look convinced. You better hope so. Because if she finds out you've got a cop helping you, she already suspects. He swallowed. Then she'll burn this whole place to the ground. Lightning flashed, illuminating the cracked fountain, overflowing again, water, running down like tears through the marble fractures. I stared at it, the symbol of everything she'd broken, and said quietly, then we rebuild it without her. By the next morning, the air in Cypress Hollow felt thinner. Like everyone was holding their breath, word had spread about the county inquiry. Marla's front lawn, once manicured to perfection, now looked strangely untended. The grass had grown half an inch past her own regulations. For her, that was a sign of panic. I was pouring coffee when my phone buzzed. Tommy, need to talk, not text, urgent. He sent an address, the old maintenance shed behind the tennis courts, the one no one used since the HOA outsourced repairs years ago. I left immediately. The shed sat behind a line of cypress trees, their needles whispering in the morning wind. Tommy was already there, pacing. He looked exhausted. Same clothes as the night before, eyes rimmed red. When he saw me, he pressed a folder against his chest. You didn't get this from me, he said. What is it? Everything, he whispered. Emails, authorizations, checks, even the ones she had me shred. I scanned them first. He handed me the folder. Inside were printouts, handwritten notes, and a USB drive taped to the back. She's been funneling money from reserve funds, he said, voice shaking. Tens of thousands over 3 years, all to that fake company, Cypress Community Services. I flipped through the pages. Marla's signature appeared again and again, looping across documents like a scar. This is solid, I said. Why now? He leaned against the doorframe. Because she's unraveling. Last night, she told the board she's hiring a private investigator to check your background. She wants to smear you before the county report drops. I stared at him. And you're done being her shield. He nodded slowly. I'm tired of being afraid. We stood in silence for a moment, the smell of wet wood and oil filling the air. I'll get this to Detective Harris, I said. Once she sees these, Marla's finished. Tommy exhaled shakily. Just don't mention my name yet. She'll know I flipped. Your secret's safe until she's in cuffs. He gave a half smile that didn't last. She's been calling emergency meetings again, trying to rewrite the bylaws. I think she wants to give herself unilateral authority over fines and enforcement. That's illegal. So is everything else she's done. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A new email alert. from the HOA office. Subject, Notice of Board Hearing, Conduct. Review, Ethan Cole. I opened it. The text was short, smug, and unmistakably Marla. Due to ongoing concerns about community safety and resident behavior, a mandatory hearing will be held Thursday, 6:00 p.m. Attendance required. Non-compliance will result in suspension of privileges. I showed it to Tommy. He swore under his breath. She's staging a public takedown. Then I'll give her one. He blinked. Ethan, no. She wants a hearing? Fine. She'll get it, but not the one she expects. When I got home, I scanned the entire folder, encrypted copies to 3 drives, and forwarded one to Detective Harris with a short note. Corroborating evidence from internal source. Then I went to the cracked marble fountain. The sky had turned the color of lead, wind rattling the leaves above it. That fountain had seen every argument, every false smile, every whispered rumor. Now it would see the truth. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No letters, no new finds. Marla was saving her energy for Thursday. I spent the time preparing copies of evidence, timelines, audio clips, the camera footage of her car in my driveway. By the time the hearing came, I was ready. Ava stood at the door as I buttoned my jacket. "You're really going?" she asked. "Yeah." "Will it fix it?" I looked at her, seeing the fear she tried to hide behind sarcasm. "It'll start to." At 5:50, I pulled into the clubhouse parking lot. The sun was setting, bleeding gold across the cracked pavement. Dozens of cars lined the lot. More than usual. People wanted a show. Through the glass doors, I could see Marla standing at the podium, clipboard in hand, smile polished to perfection. Tommy sat at the table beside her, face pale, eyes down. I stepped inside. The murmur of the crowd dimmed. All eyes turned. Marla lifted her chin. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "So glad you decided to join us. Shall we begin?" I walked forward, folder in hand, and said quietly, "Let's." The trap was set. The clubhouse was already packed when I walked in. Folding chairs filled every inch of the linoleum floor. Neighbors shoulder to shoulder, murmuring in low, nervous tones. The hum of the ceiling fan couldn't drown out the tension. Marla Denton stood at the front like she'd been waiting for her cue. Her navy suit gleamed under the fluorescent lights, her clipboard resting on the podium like a weapon. Tommy sat beside her, pale, his fingers tapping a frantic rhythm against the table edge. "Residents," Marla began, voice amplified by the cheap microphone, "this meeting has been called to address repeated violations and inappropriate conduct by one of our members, Mr. Ethan Cole." A low ripple went through the crowd. I could hear the rustle of programs, the scrape of shoes, someone whispering my name. I stepped forward. "You mean the meeting where you finally answer for yourself?" Her smile didn't falter. "You're out of order, Mr. Cole. The board will decide when you speak." I held up the folder. "Actually, the county might have a few questions of its own." She blinked, the first crack in her performance. "Excuse me?" "Before we start," I said, turning to the crowd, "I want everyone here to understand something. This isn't about trash cans or lawn height. It's about where your HOA dues have been going." Gasps, murmurs. Someone whispered, "What's he talking about?" Marla laughed too quickly. "Conspiracy theories now, Lieutenant? Perhaps your time in law enforcement has—" "Detective Rena Harris," I interrupted. "Financial Crimes Division. That name ring a bell?" Silence. Her fingers tightened around the microphone. "You're bluffing." I opened the folder and laid out copies of statements on the table. Cypress Community Services, LLC. Payments every month. Same routing number, same authorization. I turned the top sheet so the front row could see her signature. "All signed by you." The room shifted. A few residents leaned forward, squinting. Tommy swallowed hard. "It's true," he said quietly. "I've verified them." Every head turned his way. His voice cracked but kept going. "She told us it was for maintenance consulting, but it's her shell company." Marla spun on him. "You liar! You were part of it." He flinched. "Not by choice." I reached into my pocket and set the USB drive beside the papers. Digital records, bank confirmations, timestamps, all backed up and already with the county. A collective gasp filled the room, like wind through trees. Marla's mask slipped. Her voice rose, sharp and trembling. "You think you can humiliate me in front of my community? You have no idea what everyone here deserves to know," I said. "You used their money. You threatened families. You targeted my daughter." The crowd erupted. Shouts overlapped. "Is that true? You can't do that. My dues!" Marla slammed the microphone down. "This meeting is adjourned." But no one moved. Even the board members looked frozen. I looked at Tommy. "Read the ledger entries." He nodded, hands shaking, and began. March 12th, $1,500 to Cypress Community Services. April 9th, $1,500. May 14, $1,500. Each date landed like a hammer. Marla's eyes darted around, searching for an exit, for control, for anything. "Stop reading that," she shouted. A woman in the back stood. "Is that why our pool repairs never happened?" Another voice. "We paid for lighting upgrades last year. Where'd that money go?" Marla's composure fractured completely. "You people don't understand how hard I work to keep this neighborhood beautiful. Without me, it would fall apart." I took a slow breath. "Without you, it might finally breathe." Tommy placed the ledger down. His voice steadied. "I move for a vote of no confidence." Silence. Then, one by one, hands began to rise. First hesitant, then bold. Marla stared, speechless, as her empire collapsed in the fluorescent light. The microphone buzzed from feedback, filling the silence she couldn't. I gathered the documents, slid them back into the folder, and said quietly, "You should start thinking about what you'll tell the county investigator tomorrow morning." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, turning for the door, "but you'll answer for it." The crowd parted as I walked out, the sound of murmured outrage following me into the cool night. Outside, the cracked fountain glimmered under the streetlights, water trickling steady and clear for the first time in months. For once, Cypress Hollow felt quiet. But quiet never meant safe. Not yet. The morning after the hearing, Cypress Hollow didn't feel the same. For the first time in months, no one avoided eye contact. Neighbors lingered at mailboxes, whispering in clusters, half afraid, half relieved. The spell had cracked. I didn't celebrate. I'd seen too many cases collapse after the first victory. People like Marla Denton didn't surrender. They regrouped. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Rana Harris. "Got the files. We need to talk, today." We met again at the county complex, 5th floor conference room that smelled faintly of copier toner and old carpet. Rena spread the documents across the table, yellow highlighter cutting through numbers and dates. "You were right," she said. "The LLC's registered under a fake EIN, funds traced to a private account in Maryland." "How much?" I asked. "Close to 80,000, over 3 years." I whistled softly. "That's more than a side hustle." "It's organized," she said. "She'll try to claim it was consulting, but the account lists no employees, no business activity. We're requesting subpoenas." I leaned back. "So, what happens next?" Rena tapped her pen. "We build the case quietly. The county attorney's office will need corroboration, minutes from meetings, statements from board members. Tommy will testify. Good, he'll need protection too. Once she gets wind of this, she'll start digging." "She already is," I said. "She's spreading rumors about me at my daughter's school." Rena frowned. "Document everything, every contact, every message. The more control she loses, the riskier she gets." By the time I left the county building, gray clouds had rolled in again. The wind carried the smell of rain and cut grass, familiar, almost normal, but nothing in Cypress Hollow was normal anymore. When I pulled into the neighborhood, Tommy was waiting on my porch, pacing. He looked worse than before, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. "She called me 6 times today," he said. Then she left a voicemail. "You need to hear it." He handed me his phone. Marla's voice came through, syrupy sweet and edged with panic. "Tommy, darling, you've been misled. Ethan's manipulating you. Those documents are confidential. You're in serious legal trouble if you share them. But if you retract your statement, I can make this disappear." I stopped the recording. "She's bluffing." He nodded weakly. "I know, but she's scaring people. The board's fractured. Half want her gone, half think she's the victim." "That's how bullies survive," I said. "Confuse the room until no one remembers what's true." We sat on the porch steps while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the trees. The cracked fountain gurgled faintly at the entrance. its broken edges catching flashes of lightning. "She won't stop," Tommy said. "No," I agreed, "but she's running out of allies." The next morning, Detective Harris called again. "The county attorney's in," she said. "We're opening a formal investigation. I'll need you both for depositions early next week." A quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. Not triumph, just the steady weight of progress. But that evening, the retaliation resumed. Every resident's inbox pinged with a message from Cypress Hollow Board admin. Urgent notice. The sender address looked official, but the language was pure Marla. Subject: protect our community from false allegations. A certain disgruntled resident has fabricated claims against your elected board. We ask all homeowners to refrain from cooperating with external authorities until further notice. I watched the words on my screen, the familiar chill crawling up my neck. She was weaponizing perception again, turning order into chaos. Within an hour, social feeds lit up. Speculation, defense, anger. People wanted to believe the illusion she'd built. I called Rena. "She's rallying them." "I figured she would," Rena said. "Good news is the email's traceable. She sent it from the same IP tied to the LLC account. That's obstruction." For the first time, I allowed myself to smile. Then, "She just made your case stronger." Still, I couldn't shake the unease. Power never vanished quietly. It fractured, and the shards cut deep. Late that night, as I reviewed my notes, a faint knock echoed at the door. I checked the peephole. Tommy stood outside, drenched, breathless. "They're meeting again," he said. "She's promising to clean house. That means us." "Then we show up," I said. "Let's make sure the cleanup starts where it should." The wind howled through Cypress Hollow, rattling shutters, bending trees. The cracked fountain overflowed once more, spilling water down its chipped sides like the neighborhood itself was trying to wash something away. By the time Thursday arrived, Cypress Hollow had the uneasy quiet of a place waiting for a verdict. Mailboxes overflowed with gossip. Driveways were empty, as if everyone was saving fuel for the show. At 5:45 p.m., I drove toward the clubhouse. The cracked marble fountain gurgled beside the entrance, its reflection trembling in the low orange light. Reporters were already there. A white van from Channel 7 sat at the curb, satellite dish pointed skyward. Someone had leaked the investigation. Inside, the board table had been rearranged. 3 chairs now faced the audience, like defendants waiting for judgment. Marla sat in the middle, posture rigid, smile thin. Tommy hovered at the end, papers clutched like a shield. Detective Rena Harris stood near the back, blending into the crowd. She caught my eye and gave the slightest nod. "It's time." Marla tapped the microphone. "Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this is a community meeting. Decorum is expected." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled when she set the mic down. I stepped forward. "Decorum, sure, but honesty first." She exhaled sharply. "Mr. Cole, this isn't your platform." "It's everyone's," I said, turning to the residents packed into every chair. "For years you trusted this board. You paid your dues, you followed the rules, and in return you got excuses. Broken lights, cracked pavement, a fountain that never gets fixed." I held up a sheet of paper. "And here's where your money went." I handed it to the nearest resident, who passed it down the row. Each page was a copy of the county's preliminary audit. Transactions, signatures, totals. A murmur rippled through the room like wind through dry leaves. Marla laughed. Too loud, too brittle. "Anyone can forge paperwork. This is a smear campaign." Detective Harris stepped forward, her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "County Financial Crimes Division. These are certified records, Ms. Denton. You'll have the chance to review them after you're processed." The crowd gasped. Cameras clicked. Marla froze, then recovered, her tone suddenly saccharine. "Detective, surely this can wait until after the meeting. We don't need to make a spectacle." "I'm not the one who invited the press," Harris said evenly. Tommy stood then, voice shaking but clear. "She told me to create false invoices, said it was standard reimbursement. I signed because I was afraid." Marla turned on him, eyes wide. "You coward! You begged to be included." He didn't flinch. Not anymore. The room broke into a low roar, neighbors whispering, phones filming. I caught fragments. "I knew it. Our dues! She threatened me too." Marla reached for the microphone again. "None of you understand. I built this neighborhood from the ground up. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only the front rows could hear. You built it on fear, Marla, and fear doesn't last. Her eyes darted to the camera crew. This is harassment. You'll all regret this when my attorney— Harris interrupted. Your attorney can meet you downtown. She signaled to the deputy by the door. The deputy moved forward, calm, deliberate. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then Marla backed away from the table, hands trembling. You can't do this in front of them, she whispered. Transparency's healthy, Harris said. The deputy guided her toward the exit. The sound of her heels echoed down the hallway, sharp, fading, final. When the door closed, a silence hung heavy over the room. Then applause, soft at first, then rising until it filled the clubhouse like thunder breaking through humidity. Tommy sank into his chair, shoulders shaking. It's really over, he murmured. I looked at him. For her, maybe. For us, it's just starting. Someone has to fix what she broke. Outside, reporters swarmed the parking lot. Harris walked beside me, jotting notes. We'll finish the paperwork tonight, she said. She'll face charges by morning. Thank you, I said. She did most of the work herself, Harris replied, half smiling. Pride's the easiest evidence to find. As I stepped outside, the evening air felt different, lighter, cooler, like the first breath after a storm. The cracked fountain gurgled beside the walkway, its water clear again, the overflow finally slowing. I stood there a long moment, listening to the neighborhood's quiet heartbeat returning. Cypress Hollow had finally heard the truth. The day after the arrest, Cypress Hollow sounded different. No leaf blowers, no barking orders from Marla's porch. Just wind moving through the trees and the low trickle of the fountain. Finally repaired that morning by volunteers. The air felt unburdened, like the whole neighborhood had exhaled. I stood at the end of my driveway with a cup of coffee, watching sunlight glint off puddles left from last night's rain. Across the street, Tommy raked his lawn. He looked up, met my eyes, and lifted a tentative hand. For the first time in months, it wasn't a nervous wave. It was gratitude. Morning, he called. Morning, I said. Sleep at all? He gave a weak laugh. Couple hours. County called again. They're finalizing charges. Fraud, obstruction, misuse of funds. It's real. Good, I said. You did the right thing. He set the rake aside. Feels strange, doesn't it? Like we're living in a new neighborhood. Maybe we finally are. Ava came outside, backpack slung over her shoulder. Her hair caught the sunlight. She looked more like herself than she had in weeks. Principal apologized, she said. Said Ms. Denton showed up last week, pretending to be a concerned guardian. He didn't know. I nodded. Some people hide behind titles. Now she doesn't have one. Ava smirked. Think they'll make you HOA president now? Not a chance, I said, smiling. I've had enough bureaucracy for one lifetime. She grinned, and for a second, the world felt normal again. By afternoon, the news vans were gone. Channel 7 ran a 2-minute segment titled, HOA President Charged in Embezzlement Scheme. They showed a quick clip of the cracked fountain, then cut to me giving a statement. Communities fall apart when fear replaces fairness. The words sounded bigger than I'd intended, but people seemed to need them. Neighbors stopped by one after another. Mr. Landry from 3. Doors down, the Chen family, even the couple who'd once doused me with their sprinkler. They all said the same thing. We should have spoken up sooner. That evening, the board called an emergency meeting, this time led by Tommy. The clubhouse felt different under softer lights. No podium, no microphones, just folding chairs in a circle. Tommy cleared his throat. We need to rebuild trust, he said, starting with transparency, monthly budgets, open discussions, shared votes. I listened quietly. For once, no one raised their voice. No one interrupted. The sound of rain against the windows mixed with the steady hum of agreement. When the meeting ended, Tommy stopped me at the door. You staying on the compliance committee? I shook my head. You've got this now. My job was just to clear the air. He smiled. You did more than that. Outside, Ava waited by the truck. How'd it go? Better than I expected, I said. We drove through the neighborhood slowly. Porch lights glowed warm against the wet pavement. Someone had planted new flowers around the fountain. Red and white impatiens, small but stubborn. Ava rolled down her window, letting the night breeze in. "It doesn't look so bad anymore," she said. "No," I said, "it doesn't." When we got home, I found an envelope taped to the door. No threats this time, just a short note in unfamiliar handwriting. "Thank you for standing up when the rest of us couldn't." A neighbor. I left it pinned to the fridge. Later, as the house settled into silence, I sat on the porch with a beer and listened to the crickets. The same driveway that once screamed "liar" now shimmered clean in the moonlight. The truth hadn't fixed everything, it rarely does. But it had started something better. Accountability, awareness, maybe even community. Inside, Ava's laughter drifted down the hall. For the first time since that morning by the trash cans, I felt peace instead of tension in my chest. The kind of peace that comes when you stop reacting and start rebuilding. Cypress Hollow wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it finally belonged to its people again. And as the cracked marble fountain whispered in the distance, I realized that even broken things can still hold water. A week after Marla Denton's arrest, Cypress Hollow looked almost ordinary again. The lawns were green, the air smelled like cut grass and distant rain, and the fountain at the entrance, the one that had witnessed everything, finally ran clear. Someone had patched the cracks with new marble, the seams still visible but strong. I drove home from work just as the sun began to fall behind the tree line. The streetlights flickered on, one by one, a rhythm I hadn't noticed in months. They looked steady this time. No more blinking, no more nervous energy hanging in the air. Ava sat on the porch steps with her homework, earbuds in, humming softly to music only she could hear. Her backpack rested beside her like it belonged there again. When she saw me, she smiled. "Hey, Dad, you're home early." "Figured I'd catch daylight for once," I said. She stretched her legs. People at school stopped asking questions. I think the rumor mill finally died. "That's one miracle I didn't expect," I said, sitting beside her. She grinned. "You're kind of famous, you know. My civics teacher showed your interview about community integrity. He said you sound like a senator." I laughed. "Remind me to never run for anything." We sat quietly for a while, watching dusk creep across the neighborhood. A light wind carried the smell of rain and lilac from someone's garden. For the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was comfortable. "You ever regret moving here?" Ava asked suddenly. I thought about that. About the letters, the fines, the sleepless nights. About the cracked fountain, the neighbors who'd looked away, and the one who'd finally stepped forward. "No," I said. "If we hadn't, I wouldn't have learned what this place really needed." She tilted her head. "What's that?" "People willing to speak up, and stay kind when they do." Ava nodded slowly. "Like you." "Like Tommy," I corrected. "He's the one who had the most to lose. He's the reason the truth stuck." She smiled. "You still think he'll stay on the board?" "Yeah. He's got a good heart. He just needed to remember it." The porch light flickered on above us, moths already circling. Down the street, a few neighbors waved, real, unforced smiles. It still surprised me, that small change. The kind of thing you only notice after months of tension finally drain away. The next morning, a letter came in the mail. County of Fairfax, notice of restitution hearing. Marla had agreed to a plea deal, restitution to the HOA, permanent ban from any board position, community service. No fanfare, no cameras, just a quiet end to a loud rain. I folded the letter and set it aside. Justice doesn't always look cinematic. Sometimes it's just paperwork and peace. That weekend, Tommy stopped by with a toolbox. "You mind if I fix that mailbox hinge you've been ignoring?" he asked. "Be my guest," I said. As he worked, we talked about repairs, about life, about how fast things fall apart when no one's watching. He told me the new board voted to donate part of the recovered funds to community upkeep and a scholarship for local kids. Ava peeked out from the porch. "That's pretty cool," she said. Tommy smiled. "Guess something good came out of all this mess." When he left, I stood by the fountain. The water caught the afternoon light, turning gold for a second before slipping back to silver. It wasn't perfect. Neither was this place. But it didn't need to be. Perfection had been Marla's obsession. Balance. That was ours. I took a long breath, feeling the last pieces of anger loosen their grip. In the distance, I could hear kids laughing, a dog barking, and the faint hum of lawnmowers. Normal life, returning, stubborn, and beautiful. Somewhere deep inside, I realized this story wasn't about revenge. It was about responsibility, and what happens when ordinary people stop letting power scare them into silence. I turned back toward the house, catching Ava's reflection in the window. She was smiling again. Not because things were perfect, but because they were ours, and that, finally, was enough. What would you do if someone tried to rule your neighborhood like a kingdom? Would you stay silent, or stand your ground when it mattered most? If you've followed this far, hit subscribe for more stories where truth wins, even when it costs something. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar, sometimes it whispers through the sound of water running clear.